Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Cole. Saturday afternoon, June 11th, now entering week 5 of Humanities 2333 Philosophy of Life for the summer 2022 term. Everyone, let me just say a few words about the midterm exam. On the whole, scores on the midterm exam were pretty good. Better on average than what I've had in the past, by and large. So I'm very happy about that. Some scores were not so high. One student scored in the 50s and a couple others in the 60s. You know who you were. In those cases, the students had scored 100% or close to it on the discussions and the written assignment. So even though those exam scores were low, I believe those students, along with everybody else, is in pretty good shape to get through the course and to get through successfully with a fairly high grade. The midterm exam very often turns out to be the lowest grade for many students. At least that's been my experience for the past couple of years. So that so many students came through it with a decent score is very, very gratifying. Everybody, we got a message out about the second written assignment, which will be due Monday, June 27th. That is 2 weeks from this coming Monday. I'll say more about that next week. Suffice it to say, for the time being, the subject matter is open-ended, as you may have noticed if you've looked at it. Many students end up writing something pretty biographical, which is okay, but it should be philosophical also. The more philosophical content in it, the better. As you look at that assignment that asks you to consider whether or not any of your views have changed over the course of the term. You may wish to take a few minutes to peek ahead to some of the issues we will be considering through the class notes for Unit 16 at the end of the course. Okay, well, we have a good deal of time before we get to that, so I'll have more to say about that next week. All right? The material for the final, by and large, comprises the class notes for Units 9 through 16. We asked you to look at the notes for lectures 9 and 10, Units 9 and 10, this weekend, Thursday through Sunday, which is compressed into a fairly short time. I don't believe those notes, that subject matter is especially technical or complicated. It is important, I think. Please look very carefully at what I have to say. I believe you'll find in both those sets of class notes the philosopher Kierkegaard is mentioned. And so that should get your attention whenever that comes up. I mentioned last week, everybody, that this is some material that's been quite important and helpful to me. So I hope it'll be as such for you also. So I hope you will take a careful look at that, although we are kind of compressed on this 7-week schedule to get in the class notes for Units 9 and 10. Then for the rest of the week, beginning Monday, what we have on the syllabus is we're starting on subject matter related to ethics. And that's what's covered in the notes, the class notes for Units 11 and 12. Unit 11 is called Ethical Theory. As you delve into those class notes, you'll find it discusses a series of attitudes that people may hold that pose a challenge to the practice of ethics. Okay. And more than anything else, you'll notice that quite a bit, in terms of the volume of those notes, quite a bit of the discussion is taken up with the topic of cynicism. Cynicism represents a challenge to ethics, and it's a sort of attitude that's very, very widely held these days, because there's lots of things going on that may warrant a cynical interpretation. So as you look at 11, class notes for Unit 11, look very carefully at what it has to say about cynicism. Okay. Now, in the notes for Unit 12, we begin looking at different approaches to ethics. And Unit 12 is about consequentialism. That means judging the goodness or badness of an act by its consequences. And you might think that that's just common sense. Although there are some problems with it, and eventually not this week, but next week, we're going to be looking at a point of view that says that, well, you're obligated to be ethical regardless of the consequences. But anyway, for now, what you find in the class notes for Unit 12 is a discussion of two kinds of consequentialism. One is utilitarianism, and that's the point of view associated with John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham. Okay. Now, what that means is you try to quantify the amount of utility that would be produced by every act. And so you should do whatever produces the most utility, or the greatest good for the greatest number, as I believe Jeremy Bentham would have put it. Now, that's a view that's been quite influential throughout history, but not all that many people hold it anymore, at least not quite in the form that Jeremy Bentham did, in any case. Now, we move on there to talk about a different kind of consequentialism, and that is Aristotelian ethics, also known as virtue theory, or the technical term that's given to that is very often the term that's used is perfectionism. Now, in other approaches to ethics, what you do with your life is up to you, but you may have certain obligations to do or refrain from doing certain things as you pursue whatever purposes you choose to pursue. Now, according to perfectionism or virtue theory, there are some ways of life that are better than others. So perhaps it's not completely up to you. Maybe ethical theory suggests that certain ways of living are better than others. And in particular, Aristotle would say that we need to be cultivating certain virtues. And we'll live in a better world if people cultivate those virtues than if they don't. And remember, for Aristotle, it's a matter of not just knowledge, but habit. We have to habituate ourselves to the practice of any number of important virtues, which for Aristotle very often turn out to be somewhere in the middle or at the mean between two extremes. And we may have touched on some of this earlier, but you'll see this discussed further, I believe, in the class notes for Unit 12. So please, this weekend, take a look at the notes for 9 and 10. Then beginning Monday, move on to the class notes for Units 11 and 12, which is the beginning of our consideration of ethics here in the course. And after that, there are only 2 more weeks of class notes left in the course. 13 and 14, not this week, but next week, and then 15 and 16, the last week of the course. Now, not this week, but next week, we're going to be having discussion number 3. And then the following Monday, June 27th, the written assignment will be due, the second written assignment, and at that point, we'll only have about a week left in the course before the final exam. So, we have some more things to do in the last couple of weeks of the course, but for now, please concentrate on the class notes for Units 9 and 10, and especially for this week, 11 and 12, which is where we'll be beginning our consideration of ethics. And we'll have more to say about the written assignment and the discussion when we talk to you about a week from now at this time. Take it easy, good luck, study hard.